Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordy and Glory video, and in today's episode we are going to be asking and attempting to answer one simple question. Why do people seem to love hating on Warhammer 40k? Especially people in the 40k community. You see, it seems like no matter where you go, YouTube or forums or subreddits, that there's always some post, there's always some article, some video talking about how there's a big problem with Warhammer 40k, how it's a bit rubbish, and how it's all falling apart and it's terrible. Sometimes it's to do with balance, sometimes it's to do with other things, but no matter what you do, you don't seem to be able to escape this negativity that is surrounding the game. And I just want to look into that a little bit. I want to see where it's coming from and does it even really exist? So let's just crack on with it. Let's just dive right into this thing. So the first thing that I want to say is that I actually really enjoy Warhammer 40k. I love playing the game. I look forward to playing it every week when I'm doing the battle reports. I love making content about it. And I also really enjoy immersing myself in the universe as a whole, but obviously even more so with my faction of choice, the Imperial Guard. And there's a huge amount of emotional investment that I have in the game. And I would say, by and large, my real world interactions with it are really positive. From building the models and opening up a box and getting the sprue out and seeing the bits and putting it together and working out that puzzle of where things go, that I find mentally stimulating, I find that enjoyable. And then getting the paints out and putting all the paints together and finishing the model and then stepping back and going, wow, I painted that. Whew, that really gives me a dopamine hit. And then playing the game, and whether winning or losing, having great heights or terrible lows, the whole time I'm just really having fun. And so my interactions with 40k as a game are very positive. And yet also, I've made my fair share of complaints about the game as well, along with many other people. And I think these complaints, broadly speaking, fall into 2 or 3 categories. And I would say the first complaint, the biggest one, and also maybe one of the easiest ones to understand, is to do with the balance of the game. As a competitive player, naturally, balance is at the forefront of my mind, and the communities that I'm involved in, it's very much the talking point of the day. It's like British people talking about weather, 40k players talking about balance, right? They just go hand in hand. And with the release of 10th edition, there was definitely an uptick in negative chatter around the balance of the game and issues with it and how Eldar are dominating. What's interesting though is, as this has begun to get fixed, we've had a few rounds of nerfs and point changes now. You've then had the situation where the chatter hasn't gone away. People haven't gone, oh, well, GW's making good efforts, so we'll stop complaining. Instead, what you find is this other kind of complaining starts happening. So what happens is GW releases something that's unbalanced, and everyone complains about being unbalanced. And then GW fixes it, and suddenly everyone's like, oh, well, they're changing the game too much. Is it a catch-22, or are both of those things legitimate criticism? I would argue that they are both legitimate, and that it's not people complaining for the sake of complaining, but it's complaining with how, in general, the situation is handled. But I would also say there's an element of, there should be some understanding from the community that 40k is big. It's really big. If you look at a game, this often gets trotted out, and I've used this example before, like StarCraft, they've only got like 3 factions, and yet they never quite seem to be able to balance that. 40k has got, what, 26 factions? There's so many levers, there's so many different bits and bobs they've got to try and pull and balance it up and down and left and right and spin in circles, that they're never going to quite get it right. And balance is more something that we strive for, but understand that with 40k it's never going to be perfect. But I would say that you do have the sort of complaining about the game, and that's relatively easy to understand, and that sort of complaining also goes hand in hand with people having really positive experiences. For every video that you see someone put out about how the balance is screwed up, you'll have a video that goes out about someone really enjoying building and painting their first set of models or doing some sort of diorama. For every negative gameplay video, you've got like a positive, like, hobbying video. And also you'll have gameplay videos which are really positive as well, like battle reports often can be really, really enjoyable things consume, and that's the level of media that people will really like to interact with. So you could kind of understand the gameplay stuff. That level of complaining does make sense, and it's relatively easy to understand how, as the levers get pulled, chatter is going to generate in one form or another. But even if Games Workshop managed to balance the game perfectly, I still think there would be a lot of complaints, and there'd be a lot of issues that were happening online. And I would say, for me, there's a disconnect. And I'm not sure, I think a lot of people get this, I would say, but I think some people are working their way through this online, and they're kind of coming to this location, they're coming to this conclusion. And I reached it recently with my own video, where I had an experience when GW were getting rid of the Firstborn. I put a video out there saying, I'm done with Games Workshop. And a lot of people saw that video and they said, oh, so you're quitting 40k? And I was like, no. And I made it very clear in that video, and I even left comments, and I've reiterated this point a few times, but I'm just gonna make it for the sake of this video. I don't hate 40k, and I'm not quitting 40k. I love 40k, and I want to keep playing 40k. For me, the disconnect, where I would say my own sort of gripes with the game right now, are not actually with the game, but are with Games Workshop. You see, you can love 40k, but also be kind of pissed off with what GW's doing, with the messing around, with the you can only take unit options for stuff that's in the boxes that they sell. And, you know, look at Catachans, where they can only take flamers, and yet they've been able to take other special weapons for ages, and how that starts invalidating people's collections. And it's interesting how these complaints about the game aren't actually really anything to do with the game themselves. They're to do with decisions that are being made by the company that happens to own 40k. It's obviously Games Workshop. But a lot of the anti-consumer complaint stuff are related to GW and putting the prices up. People feel like they're not getting a good deal. And I would say my biggest issue right now, and something that I've had to try and like rein back on a little bit, because I feel like I'm just sort of standing on a soapbox, or like I'm an old man yelling at a crowd kind of stuff. But for me, the biggest issue that I have with GW is it feels like my biggest complaint, what I love to complain about, is GW, it feels like they're being a bit dishonest, how they're giving with one hand, taking with another, how they say one thing but another thing materializes. I've often referred to this as GW taking one step forward, two steps backwards. A great example of this was when GW said, we are going to get rid of power level, we know everyone doesn't really use it, so we're just going to give you guys what you want, which is points. And then they showed the points for 10th edition, and it's just power level. They've taken a power level, put a 0 on it, and called it points. That for me is really, really frustrating, and I think the dishonesty of the company is what's kind of started me to start complaining about them a bit more. And what's interesting is, as you almost enjoy complaining about it. And this is very much criticism that I'm leveling at myself right now. You kind of, I'm going to complain about GW. Oh, there's like a morbid enjoyment about it, and it's important that you don't want to end up getting sort of into a whirlpool, into a self-fulfilling cycle of just becoming a salty person and just constantly being salty and complaining. So I think, for me personally, something that I want to work on, something going forward that I want to try and do better at, is not just complain for the sake of complaining, but I want to be there and be like, okay, when they do something good, I'm going to be like, look, GW, amazing model, Old World comes out, awesome, brilliant. And then when they do something bad, I want to be like, okay, this particular instance, I'm not happy with it. And I think being able to apply that evenly as well is very fair, not just to Games Workshop, but to other companies, because that's something that happens a lot. You see people that like they say GW is like the villain, the boogeyman, and then they hold up other companies as being like unchallengeable, unimpeachable. They're saints, and I don't think that's the case. I think every company in the world, but also which is a bit of a big topic, but every company in this hobby space will have good parts, bad parts. They're going to have warts and all, right? But Games Workshop definitely seems to get a lot more lambasting. They get a lot more flack than I think other companies do as well. So it's interesting. I don't necessarily certain what that might be. Maybe it's just a case of, hey, if you're on the top, everyone wants a piece of you. That could be it. Or maybe it's the fact that GW being a bigger company, when they make a change, it ripples out through the online community a bit more. But this kind of leads me on to the last bit that I want to make. So we've talked about complaints with the game and where that might come from, and we've talked about complaints with Games Workshop and what might be causing that. But I want to talk about the online aspect. I wonder if there are a lot of people that are online chatting about this, and because people like to complain about 40k, if someone says something negative, other people pick up on it and they go, yeah, that's the case with me. But if it's something that they see and that they go, oh yeah, that's quite like a positive thing, they just maybe give it a like or something, then they just sort of move on, and that's kind of it. I wonder if the negative side of things prompts a more active response online. And I'm not saying anyone's doing any of this maliciously or anything like that. I'm not saying people are farming negative karma or anything like that. What I'm saying is I just wonder if naturally humans online are drawn towards reading about more negative stuff than they are towards reading about positive stuff. Like an example I would give with this, and it's not a 40k example, but I think it's one that's quite personal to me, and I've spoken about this in my live streams before, which is I a few years ago was finding myself just really struggling with quite a lot of negativity. I wouldn't say that I was depressed or anything like that. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying depression doesn't exist. Depression definitely does exist. I'm just saying that's not what I was going through, okay? And that's not for any, like, oh, I wasn't depressed, I'm a man, or anything like that. What I mean is people will go, when people are depressed, it's a serious issue. And I'm not talking about a serious issue here, boys. I'm just saying I was getting a little bit down in the dumps, okay? There are other people that are much worse off than I am. They use the word depressed properly. And for me to use it now would be to cheapen it, right? So I was going through what I would say is a bit of a down phase, a little bit of a down in the dumps. And what I was finding is that every lunch break when I was at work, I would be going online, I'd be like reading the news. And then I was coming home in the car, I'd have the radio on, and I'd be listening to the news. And then when I was get home and I was making dinner, I'd be again online reading about the news. What I found was I was getting quite riled up by stuff that I was reading on the news, or I was watching, or I was like videos, and there was these things that were going on, and I was like, this is outrage. And then what happened is Mrs. Mordian, who is the best person in the world, I will simp for Mrs. Mordian every day of the week. I'm not ashamed of that. She was like, yeah, but is any of this really affecting you? And I was like, it's a really good point. Is any of this actually affecting me? All of these terrible things that are going on in the world, is any of it actually impacting me? And so what I did is I took a step back. I didn't delete my social media or anything like that. Nothing so extravagant. But I just went, you know what? I'm just going to make a change. I'm just going to read about different things. We're not going to read the news. I'm going to focus on particular things, like I'm going to read about this game called Bolt Action, and then we all know where that's ended up, right? So I'm going to focus on some more positive stuff instead. And I realized that actually a lot of the stuff that I was getting me riled up and outraged wasn't actually impacting me. Now the point of this story is not to start talking about social media or mainstream media or anything like that. That's not a debate. It's not what the channel's about, okay? The point is to actually sort of take what I realize there and sort of apply it to maybe 40k. And it's important when you're like reading about how Eldar are dominating and destroying everyone. It's like, well, and you're getting like really outraged by that. And you're like, oh, Eldar are bullshit. And it's like, well, hang on, are you actually playing Eldar? Like, well, no one in my group's got Eldar. It's like, well, okay, so are you getting outraged about something that's like affecting you, or are you just getting, or are you getting shit bullets loaded into you and you're firing off those shit bullets that's like a shit gun, Randy? Is that what's happening? Now, it's important to say that you can absolutely sympathize with causes and all that stuff. That's all we're saying here. But I think what I would say is happening with a lot of people on 40k, as it's becoming more mainstream, and as it's more and more people are jumping on it, and as people are just talking about it and generating content and stuff, I think it's important to understand that you can like absorb that content and you can like interact with it and everything. But I think it's also important to take a step back and be like, okay, is this particular topic that I'm getting wound up about, is this particular army, this particular faction, particular list, particular rules, this results of this tournament, is this actually impacting my gameplay. You have a lot of people that really complain about the balance of the game and tournament stuff. They never go to events. So I wonder if there's an element of that going on in 40k. If we're all kind of contributing to the conversation, but we're all kind of also forgetting that it's not necessarily impacting us. But that's, of course, all of this. It's just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Why do you think there's so much negativity surrounding Games Workshop right now? And what do you think the long-term impact of that is going to be? Is it going to affect the health of the game? Also, are you someone that is actually experiencing real-world, that negative game experiences with getting smashed by unbalanced lists and stuff? Are you actually having those problems? Or are you one of the people that maybe once you listen to the video, you go take a step back and go, oh, maybe it's not bothering me quite as much as I thought it was. Let me know, guys. Get your thoughts down there. Feel free to discuss it. I am really interested to know what is going through your guys' head. This is very much for me a bit of a rambling video. I know we haven't really come to any major conclusions, but it's kind of just me putting my thoughts out there, and I'm hoping that it will spark some interesting discussion. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. So a massive thank you to Bon Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, August Vardy, and the Tommies. Thank you guys. Your incredible support makes a huge difference, and it is a big part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time. But that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.